Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The manhwa starts with nothing but destruction, and a man panting while holding someone by the throat. The person laughs saying they knew it. They look over to see the bodies of other people, saying the man is different from those worthless fools. The man tells him to shut up, but they say to kill him, and that he's the only one fit to kill him anyways. The man says he won't be doing that, as he's promised his team to let justice be the one to judge him. The man says he regrets it so much, and wishes he just executed him on that day. We see on the news that the white-haired person is named Sungwon Huang. He's been sentenced to death from court, and a superpower suppression device was placed on Huang. And now he is placed in the 5th basement floor of the Ruculus prison, which is designed for villains. And some of the heroes who fought alongside the hero Gang Yuseo have also passed away. The funeral for these heroes will be held tonight. The man from earlier is Gang Yuseo. Someone else cuts the TV off, and says Gang Yu should be recovering and resting in bed. He works in the Ruculus prison. His name is Gang Hoseo. He is Gang Yu's twin brother. Gang Yu says he should have killed Huang himself. Gang Ho says he promised his teammates. Gang Yu has a flashback of one of his party members saying they shouldn't kill others, even if they are terrible villains. Since they are people still, Gang Yu says that's nice and all, but what if they die? She tells him to promise them all he won't kill anyone, no matter what happens. Gang Ho says he agrees with her. People should be sentenced by the law. And corrections officers like him have to help carry out those sentences. He says that Huang will be executed next week, and he'll be there as well. He tells his brother he did his job as a hero, and leave the rest to them. He tells his brother to get up, and they can go say farewell to his teammates. We see at their memorial people are begging for Huang's death to happen sooner. Gang Yu puts a flower down. Then a week later, on the day of Huang's execution, Gang Ho was killed, and Huang survived. Inside of the memorial room is just Gang Yu sitting there alone, and a woman calls out to him saying she hasn't seen him in a while. She is the warden of Ruculus prison, Seo Yunjo. She asks him if he has a minute to talk. He glares at her. Then she hands him an iPad. He asks what this is, and she tells him it's what happened during Huang's execution. In the video we see the corrections officers walking down the hallway with Huang, and he asks Gang Yu if he's Gang Ho's brother. Then says he must not have superpowers, which is why he's a prison guard. Then he asks who is older. He ignores him, and then Huang asks how he feels when he kills people. Gang Ho asks what he means, and he says that he's a prison guard and an executioner. So surely he's killed people like him too. Huang says he feels like it's too easy. Gang Ho asks what he means. Huang says a gentle touch makes people pop like zits. Gang Ho says he's not like that, and he struggles with guilt, even when he has to execute scumbags. Even though he only presses a button, he has endless nightmares about the guilt of taking another's life. One of the villains says he's just like them, and that he's a murderer. This is his recurring nightmare. Huang asks why he's still working here. He says that someone has to do it, and that it's just his job. They strap Huang down, and say before they begin, Huang should say his final words now. He just asks who is older once again, and Gang Ho says alright then, and starts to count down from 3. When he hits 1 he presses the button, and the power goes out. Gang Yu is pissed, and Yoon Jo says right at the moment of execution all of the power went out. The guards wonder if Huang is still inside, and Gang Ho sees Huang saying he knew it, and he breaks off his straitjacket, saying only Gang Yu can kill him. Gang Ho tells everyone to get down, and pushes 1 out of the way of an explosion. The corrections officers start to call for backup, saying Huang's suppression device broke. He repeats it, as Huang puts his hand on the man's shoulder and smiles. The man begins to swell up, and Huang says that's right, and pops the dude like a balloon. Gang Ho is covered in meat chunks and blood, and Huang says that he thinks he is the older brother, asking if he's okay. Gang Ho pulls out his baton and swings at Huang, but his arm gets turned into a pretzel. Gang Ho drops to his knees due to the pain, and Huang asks if he got it right. Gang Ho reaches for his baton again, saying he deserves to be punished by the law. He swings again, saying justice must be served, but gets warped into a chunk of meat and red mist. His cap slowly falls to the floor, beside all that is left of his life. Huang says he's better off asking Gang Yu if he got it right. Gang Yu is speechless, and Yoonjo says that the EMP strike set all of the prisoners free of their suppression devices. Kind of weird there aren't any backup generators. The good news is that they've been stopped from escaping, but many officers are trapped inside. Gang Yu asks who launched the EMP strike. Yoonjo says they are still trying to find out, and says she's sorry to ask this of him at his brother's funeral. Asking if he can suppress the riot at the prison. Gang Yu says of course, but only if they agree to his condition first. It jumps to the prison, they are trying to break the door down and murdering guards. Gang Yu says his teammates told him heroes aren't meant to kill, and that his brother, a corrections officer, also said the same thing, and that people must be sentenced by the law. And that the people who carry out that sentence are the executioners, as the prisoners get launched. They wonder what the hell that was, as we see Gang Yu's figure in the doorway. He says he isn't here as a hero. But he is here as their executioner, and introduces himself as their corrections officer. The prisoners wonder why a hero is wearing a guard's uniform. But say it's nice to meet him, they charge directly at him. He clenches his fist, rears it back and puts a hole through them, but the attack is so powerful it rips the limbs off of so many prisoners while launching them. The prisoners who didn't get hit are confused and look at the aftermath in complete fear. Gang Yu says testing, telling them to listen up. Under the order of the government, everyone from the ground floor, to the first, second, third and fourth floors, to the very end of the fifth floor, he will take it all back. Huang is glad that he's here, and Gang Yu says he will execute everyone on his way down. The prisoners ask if he's really going to kill them all. Gang Yu says they've taken countless lives themselves, asking why they are getting upset. One of them chirps up saying he didn't kill many people, but he has killed 12, the man is named Kalita. Another man named Brooks says he's also not done much, but he's dismembered 7 people. And a fat dude who hugged and tickled kids says he's also not killed many people. They tell him he can't decide if they die or not, and to get their lawyers. Another guy named Choi doesn't say a word, but says it's getting rowdy, and says while Gang Yu is distracted he can use this chance. He activates her power, dashing around the room at Mach 5. He says it's time to break out of this place, but he sees a boot coming to his face, and bro got ahead of himself with that one. Gang Yu says he'll give them a choice, they can put their devices on and return to their cells, awaiting for execution. Or he can just kill them right now. They shudder in fear. And one of them laughs saying that the latter is obviously the best choice. Since they'll end up dying anyways, why not die putting up a fight? The terms of negotiation doesn't make sense. Gang Yu says this shit is not a negotiation, it's just an act of mercy he is offering them. They start to realize they are screwed, since he's a hero and not just a guard. They talk about putting their devices on, and the man from earlier activates his power and shouts, saying to listen to him as his voice echoes throughout the floor. They turn to see him, he says to listen, and even if he's the hero there's only one of him. He says in fact, he's killed a second-tier hero before, and did it with teamwork. They all start to grin, saying this means they can win. The man says that's right, they can just make light work of him and escape. Gang Yul says that he must be the scumbag the warden told him about. It cuts to Yunjo saying that the prisoners are grouped up by threat level. The ground floor has 300 serial killers. The first basement floor has 100 criminals that can wipe out towns. The second basement floor has 30 people who can wipe out cities. The third basement floor has 10 people who can ruin a nation. The fourth basement floor holds 5 people who pose a threat to an entire continent. The fifth and final floor holds 3 people, including Huang, who are world-level threats. Yunjo says she knows there's a lot for him to deal with. But he won't have to face all of them. We see on the second floor 2 sisters with a group of prisoners forcing them to confess their sins. On the 5th floor, we see a girl and Huang walks up holding someone's meat chunks in their body. Saying he didn't know anyone else was down here. Turns out the prisoners aren't all that friendly to one another. Huang smiles, saying he can kill some time waiting for Gang Yu now. Yunjo says things are a bit different on the ground floor, as everyone is united under one man. Hillison, he has a power that lets him shout and empowers those around him. Gang Yu says he knows Hillison attacked a hospital with 30 other criminals, and that they did it to kill 7 civilians and a hero. Hillison says 10, it was 10 people as the hero was pregnant with twins. Gang Yu calms into Yunjo saying he might have to use force, asking if the prison is durable. She says he can't break it no matter what he does, she guarantees it. He says he won't hold back then. Hillison says he is bluffing, and he barely did anything in his hero group called Equality. He bets he captures Huang by sacrificing his team, and just got the final hits in. Hillison says they'll let him join his teammates soon, then shouts casting a strength buff to everyone around him. The prisoners start to take their trenbologna sandwiches, and Hillison tells them to jump him. They charge at him, but Gang Yu simply kicks his leg, generating enough power to one-sidedly dismember the unlucky bastards who decided to be in the front line. Hillison begins to nervously sweat, and wonders what the hell just happened. As they begin to genuinely feel fear for their lives, he begins to feel an immense pressure. Gangyu raises his leg into the air, and is about to drop it to the ground. He stomps it down, sending those in front of him soaring through the sky. The entire prison begins to shake, and one of the prisoners inside solitary wonders if Gangyu caused that. Hillison screams, asking what's going on. Then looks up to see Gangyu coming in. Gangyu's red energy begins to form around his hand, and they all panic to try and stop him before his attack comes through. We see the gauntlet Gangyu made is called Mode 1, and the attack he just sent out begins to slice people into pieces. Hillison finally gets what he deserved. He says this can't be, and all of their bodies begin to fall to the floor, leaving only Gangyu alive amidst the sea of dismembered corpses. He then uses his mic again, saying the ground floor have all been executed, so it's time for him to head to solitary confinement. Gangyu wonders how many he killed, how many hundreds. We see him telling 2 prisoners to either put their suppression devices on or die right now. They get scared, but one of them rushes in and gets his head kicked off in an instant. The other man says he'll do it, and put his device back on. Gangyu tells the man to come over and take it. The man puts his hands out, saying to give it to him, but Gangyu doesn't bite as the man starts to charge his attack. He launches it, hitting Gangyu. Asking what kind of moron would willingly put the device back on, Gangyu is completely unfazed, and Gangyu recalls a woman named Tame saying she pities those without physical type powers. Saying they can only fire attacks from a distance, they don't know how good it feels to crush someone with their bare hands. Gangyu's fist flies to the man, and he blows his head off, asking if this is meant to feel good. Saying it feels like breaking an egg, he keeps walking forward, going room by room, until we hear a man saying he wondered what the commotion was about. He recognizes Gangyu, saying it's been 3 years at least. The man is Chuck Fielder, a cannibal. He stands up saying it seems like he found a new job, but says he looks like shit. Gangyu tells him to choose putting the suppression device on, or dying. Chuck says he knew he'd see him again, and we see him captured by Equality, and Gangyu looks over to see that he's been eating his victims. Chuck asks him if it looks good, saying they are freshly cooked so it's still tasty. Gangyu gets pissed, and says that he's left with no choice now. He's just going to kill Chuck here. But the blonde girl yells his name. He turns to see her and she looks sad, telling him no. Chuck says he looked really unhappy when his teammates stopped him from killing him. Gangyu says if he doesn't answer the question, he'll kill him now. Chuck asks if he knows why he killed people. Gangyu cuts his head off, saying he doesn't care. Chuck still talks, saying that he did it so they remember him. When he kills someone, he becomes the most memorable person in their lives. He can use his memory to engrave the memory of him in their eyes, so they'll never forget him, not even in death. As he creates images of himself all around one of his victims. Chuck says he remembers everyone he's killed, and asks if he should name them one by one. He starts to create the image of one of them, and holds her by the head, but his arm gets cut off in an instant. Gangyu says that he sees why he's in solitary confinement. He was aiming for his mouth, but he guesses he was somehow able to dodge it a bit. Chuck says he has a question before he dies, asking if he remembers the people he's killed on his way down here. Gangyu says there's no point remembering filth. He begins to create the images of the Equality members, and they all start to call out to Gangyu. Chuck smiles widely, asking if he will remember this. They approach him, but he without hesitation rushes through, cutting them down. Gangyu asks him if he's got any other tricks, and Chuck is surprised, saying he can't believe he didn't even waste a second. Gangyu says it's because they are all hallucinations anyways, cutting Chuck in half. As he falls to the ground, Gangyu says he's not a hero anymore, he's a corrections officer. Chuck says he isn't a prison guard either, he's nothing but a monster, and that he's no different from Huang. Gangyu is not happy about hearing that, then it jumps to Huang, saying this is boring, as the other girl won't even fight back. He wonders how long it'll take for Gangyu to arrive. Or maybe he should head up himself. It jumps to outside the prison. We see a group of 3, and a girl named Sinka is watching Gangyu from a tablet, and she says that he's going to be her husband. We got a psycho. They ask what she means, and she repeats it. The man named Canis says that she wanted Huang to be her husband though, and the other girl named Gato says that's why they even shot the Emp strike out. Canis tells her that Gangyu is a hero, and an obstacle to villains. Sinka says that he was a hero, but he definitely isn't one right now. They tell her to make up her mind, and she can't get both. She says she doesn't know who to pick, then decides to just pick the one that survives. Now she can't wait to watch who survives. Yoonjo tells Gangyu well done, saying he's wasted no time clearing the ground floor. She tells him the prisoners get much stronger from here on out, and he should rest. He says he doesn't need to, and he'll descending, so open the door. She says she understands. She says that she has a favor for him, and that she's getting signals from the officers that are still alive on the lower floors. So please help them so they can return safely. He asks her if she knows how many are alive on each floor. She says no, since communication devices below the first floor are all shattered. Except for on the 5th floor. We see a man crawling, and begging for help as the camera sees all of this. Huang explodes the man in front of the camera, almost as if it's an invitation to come down. Gangyu says he'll get going, and Yoonjo tells them to open the gates. As it opens, she warns him again they get much stronger on the way down. As the gate opens we hear a rumbling and Gangyu gets sucker punched. As a group starts to try and escape, they bombard Gangyu with ranged attacks, saying they knew he was coming. Yoonjo calls out to him, and a man says she can't worry about others, as she has her own problems to deal with. He is surprised and grabs her by the throat, saying this is nice. He says he always wanted to wipe that smug look off her face. He tells the rest they can take turns with her, but sees that everyone is dead behind him. He wonders what happened, then looks up to see Gangyu, who hits the man, turning him into a meat crayon. Yoonjo falls to the ground, and Gangyu tells her to not stay around when they open the next floor. Since it isn't safe, she is aloof, saying she gets it. She then tells him that the villain Tomoki, that Tomei captured, is in the basement of the 1st floor. He says he knows, and heads down there. Some guys wonder if others have escaped yet. Tomoki calls them idiots, saying there's only one reason for that sound. She says she told them to stop, but they didn't listen. We learn she's killed 28 heroes. She herself is an ex-hero, and says there's a reason they are villains, they don't think. One of them insults her, asking if she wants to die. She asks if he thinks he can kill her, saying he's only fought civilians, and he's never fought someone with superpowers. But no way, or else he'd not be here. He says he's going to kill her right now. She instantly slices the man down the middle, saying yeah right, wondering why he thought he stood a chance. She says she captured countless villains, and learned how to fight against people with superpowers. She's used it to kill heroes too. She tells the rest to join forces with her. She'll teach them how to hunt down other superhumans too. We see Gangyu walking down the hallway, and she says she knows his abilities too. They ask how she knows his abilities. She tells them she lived as a hero. So she knows a lot about other heroes too. One of them says so what, he was part of Equality, so he's a 1st-tier hero, unlike Tomoki, who was just a 3rd-tier hero. She laughs, saying when Ryosa, the blonde girl, became the leader of Equality, she started to reform the hero industry. She banned heroes from killing villains, and regularly made heroes train in groups. And lastly, she abolished the tier system that separated the heroes. She's telling them this, because the tier systems were abolished before Gangyu joined. Nobody expected him to join, since he had no notable achievements. So the rumor was that he was Ryosa's lover. The man says that she's right, and he's never seen Gangyu fight before. Yet it barely took him any time at all to wipe out the ground floor, so he's at least a 2nd-tier hero. Tomoki says they were all weaklings, even this group could have wiped them out, as they've each killed thousands of people. And the man's name is Speech, and he's killed 6,400 people. She says that Gangyu isn't weak, but that she knows his weakness, so that's why she's telling him they can hunt him down. Speech asks if he's sure about the weakness. She asks why they are being indecisive, saying he's getting closer with every second. The majority decide to go with her. But Speech doesn't say he'll go yet, but ultimately decides to fight with her, asking for the plan. We learn that superpowers were first observed centuries ago, and over the years researchers studied and grouped the powers into 3 types. Physical type superpowers, creation type superpowers, and special type superpowers that don't fit the first 2 categories. The group is waiting. As Gangyu enters, they say he's here. Their eyes all begin to glow blue as Speech is using his abilities with Tomoki to share the other's vision. Tomoki says Gangyu has a physical type power just like she does. She thinks she knows his weakness since she saw him training when she was still a heroine. She saw him get point blank with one of the big robots, and as it charged its attack, it jumps back to Gangyu, telling the group to either put their devices back on, or die just like usual. An attack flies out from the side, exploding on the right side of Gangyu. Tomoki smirks, saying he doesn't dodge attacks, and she's placed prisoners with creation-type powers behind the fortified cell doors, so they can wail on Gangyu from afar. A ton of attacks hit him, and Speech says she was right, he's eating their attacks. But Tomoki knew why he didn't dodge, as he just didn't need to bother. But she added something as well, to the barrage of ranged attacks. Things begin to wrap around his body, and they are none other than the suppression devices, for the prisoners. One of the prisoners say all set. It cuts back to Speech saying he found them on the dead guards, and got them like she asked. He asks if they'll even work on him. She says they just need a bunch of them. 10 should be plenty to suppress a second-tier hero, and 15 for a first-tier hero. So they've got enough on him. She tells the guy Million to attach the devices while the others bombard him. But says to play safe, and attach 30 of them on him. Now we know what her plan was, and the prisoners say he's cooked now, but of course Tomoki's plan had 3 flaws. The first is that he began to break the devices just by flexing, as he was in his own league of heroes. The prisoners watch the devices fly in the air, and he comes in with his fist, punching a hole through a few of them. From one of the prisoners' Speech sees this, and tells Tomoki he just broke through the suppression devices. She is surprised. The survivors begin to run saying it's time for phase 2. Speech shouts to inform the others. They tell Gangyu to freeze, as they are holding a guard hostage, saying if he moves they'll kill him. Turns out they have quite a few guards in their hands. Gangyu's attack appears, taking out all of the prisoners nearby, freeing the guards. Their second flaw is that Gangyu isn't limited to close quarters, as he is a special type. We see another sea of bodies remains from his attack. The ranged attackers say they'll put their devices on and beg for mercy, but Gangyu has formed a giant sword with his power and swings it in a circle around the room, cutting through anything that it slices, as the final flaw in Tomoki's plan was trying to fight someone they had no hope of winning against. Speech watches this happen, and says oh shit. He asks Tomoki if she has a backup plan, but she is lost in thought. Speech says he knew trusting her was a mistake. She wonders how the 30 devices didn't work against him, and Speech says he'll just put his device on. Tomoki tells him to shut up, and stabs him through the chest out of frustration. She continuously stabs him, asking if he thinks he is better than she is. She says they definitely attached enough to stop a first-tier hero, so how the hell did he break out? She wonders why he never fought the villains by himself if he's this strong, and yells saying none of this makes sense. She hears a guard crawling below, and he makes eye contact, then starts to crawl away begging for help. She swings at him, but has her hand cut off, as Gangyu is here with his gauntlet on. He asks her if she has any final words. She nervously laughs, since she's screwed. He asks if these are her last words. She asks if it's true that all of the other equality heroes are dead. He says yes. He says that means Tomei is dead too. Huh? He doesn't answer, and she understands it means yes. She says she told her not to become a hero, but her sister wouldn't listen. Then says she can't believe he killed so many people when he was a hero, asking if others know about this. She says surely he knows how hard Ryosa worked to change the industry, yet he just undid everything she worked for, so she must be rolling in her grave. He asks if she's done yet. She flashbacks us, saying she felt something wrong in the hero industry, the fact that heroes hunted villains. We see a villain holding a girl hostage, and threatens the hero. But the hero cuts both the hostage and villain in half, as heroes are granted immunity for killing civilians. They were above the law. She was a heroine named Bliss for a simple reason. We see her walking with Tomei, her little sister. Tomei didn't have superpowers. Tomei looked up to her a lot, but Tomoki loved the attention. We see a girl thanking her for saving her, and Tomoki says of course, it's her job after all. Then she ended up killing a villain in one of her missions. After the first kill she became addicted. She felt a rush she's never had before, and that killing people feels ecstatic to her. She killed anyone she could find, from villains to heroes, it didn't matter. She enjoyed killing her colleagues who were weaker than her the most. Their looks of betrayal and surprise made her feel absolute bliss. When they began to cry and plead, she was at the highest point in her life. But no crime goes unpunished. Tomei thought it was weird that Tomoki always came home late with a heavy scent of blood. So she followed her one day, and found her murdering a group of thugs, catching her red-handed. She covers her mouth after calling out to her sister, who says she told her not to leave the house when it's late. But guesses it's too late for that, asking if she'd like to join her. And if not, she'll continue killing them. Tomei screamed no, and a chain appears, wrapping around Tomoki's wrist, as this is how Tomei awakened her power. Stopping her sister was her first act as a heroine, but she got away. After this she was officially registered as a hero, and she began to track her sister down. Then one day she finally caught her sister and arrested her. Tomoki says she's her sister, saying it's upsetting. Tomoki says she can tell her sister's power is strong, but it's sad that it isn't a physical type superpower. This is where she said the quote about pitying those who can't feel the thrill of crushing someone with their bare hands. She says her sister will never understand how she feels. Tomei says she isn't her sister. Tomoki asks how she died, and asks if she went peacefully. Gangyu says that she died while fighting Huang. We see Tomei crying, saying how much it hurts, begging for her older sister to save her. Gangyu tells her this, and Tomoki says she shouldn't have asked. She transforms her missing hand into a blade, saying it left a bitter taste in her mouth. She dashes at Gangyu, stabbing him in the chest, but sees that he's already moved behind her. She turns to attack again, but he kicks her in the side, knocking her into a wall. As the smoke begins to settle, Tomoki comes back out of it, only to get punched in the stomach. She coughs up blood, and drops to her knees, undoing her transformation. She looks up at him, and he says that it makes him sad to kill a teammate's family member. She says then maybe he could spare her, since he's a hero and he made a promise to not kill. He says he's no longer a hero. She begs for him not to kill her, saying she really doesn't want to die. He tells her to listen to herself, saying surely she heard it over and over while murdering others. He asks what her response to them was. She begins to cry and laugh. And he rears his fist back. The punch caused a loud enough sound, and a tremble that shook the entire prison. Sinka asks if the others heard that, saying it must be Gangyu. A prison guard on the inside was terrified of what she heard, and Huang looked up happy, saying he can't wait anymore, and that he'll head up right now. But gets kicked in the side, making him slam to the wall. Huang says that was unexpected. We hear an old man asking if he's bored, saying he'll play with him. His name is Kingston. Huang says he looks creepy. Kingston says he isn't, he just enjoys playing with kids. Some guards in the security room tell Yunjo that there's something going on down there, and that Kingston and Huang are about to fight. She says that's good news, one of them will surely die. She hopes it's Huang, since Kingston isn't that much of a threat in comparison. But she's curious why Huang is holding the girl in the air. Huang asks Kingston if he'll play, and he says sure. But Huang says he doesn't wanna. Kingston says he would love to play with him. He's the first prisoner to have been locked up here, and the longest serving inmate. Unlike the other inmates in the 4th and 5th floors, who killed millions of people, Kingston only killed 3 people. His first victim was Karkas, the most powerful and heinous villain of his time. The other 2 were a powerful hero duo named Clark and Hilo. Kingston appeared out of nowhere and killed them at the same time. We see him in a martial arts gi, asking if he's the strongest in the world now. But he was disappointed by those he fought, and let the government take him in. He was a big threat, but he turned himself in, and the fact the government and Hero Association weren't friendly then allowed him to live here for 30 years without worry of execution. He says he won't kill Huang, he just wants to play. Huang agrees on it, and starts to lift the guards' bodies into the air. Then turns them all into meat wads. Huang says he guesses he can play for a bit. Then sends the meatballs towards Kingston. As they get closer, he begins to slowly move his hand, and begins to deflect and redirect their trajectories, making them all avoid him. Then they explode. Blood begins to rain throughout the room and Kingston smirks. He says he thought Huang used telekinesis, but the way he attacks and defends says otherwise. Asking if he has any other attacks. Huang says he changed his mind, playing with him won't be fun, and there's no point of killing someone who is about to die of old age. Kingston says he's arrogant, and he's seen many like him. Those who think they are the biggest fish in the pond. He starts to run at Huang, destroying the floor below himself. He says they always let their ego get the best of them. In the security room, the guard panics, and Yunjo tells him to calm down, saying Ruculus won't collapse from this. It has 20 layers that can withstand the power of 1st and 2nd tier heroes easily. Back to Kingston, he says he'll teach him some manners. He jolts forward and starts to head straight towards Huang with a drop kick. We see it right in front of his face, then hear the sound barrier shatter from the hit. The entire prison shakes again, the guard screams and Gangyu stands still. Yunjo asks if the fight is over yet, and who won. They tell her that isn't the issue, and that the walls got broken like styrofoam. Yunjo starts to sweat nervously, saying they are screwed. Huang heads to the walls, saying he's like a living drill, asking how he broke through all of the walls. He says this could be interesting, wondering if he should follow him out. Then we hear Sinka says ew, no. And that it would be more fun to sit here and talk to her. Yunjo is surprised, and Huang asks who she is. She says he can find out more if they talk. Yunjo yells, asking how the hell she got into the 5th level basement. then looks up at the camera. The spectators can go, and cut the camera off. Yoonjo hits the desk out of frustration. Gangyu stands in front of the gate to go down, telling Yoonjo that he's cleared the entirety of the first floor now, and to open the gate. But she tells him to hold on. He asks what's wrong, and it cuts out. So he decides that the signal is just bad, and forcefully opens the door, saying it must get worse as he goes down. He went down the stairs, and unlike the ground floor and the first floor which reeked of blood, there isn't a stench anywhere on the second floor. In fact, there wasn't anyone, not even a corpse in sight. It was too clean. He hears someone screaming and turns to see the female guard from earlier running from monsters. She yells, saying to get away from me. Then she spots Gangyu, and calls him Gangho. The monsters go to attack her, but gets deleted. She wonders what happened, and he asks her if she is alright. She calls him Gangho again and hugs him. She says she thought he was on the 5th floor, and asks what he just did, wondering why he didn't tell her about his superpowers. He pushes her away, saying he isn't Gangho, but his brother. She stutters, asking if he's the hero Gangyu. Then asks why he's in a uniform, and why he is even here. He says she must be Gangho's colleague, and that it isn't safe here. She calls him brother-in-law. He asks what she means. She says she needs to introduce herself, and that she's going to be his sister-in-law, and he and Gangho really look alike. He is lost. Then it cuts to the isolation cells. We hear a girl talking to his sister. She says it sounds like an outsider is here. They are sisters named Mael and Miel, and they wonder how many sins their outsider has committed in his life. Mael says that he killed her dogs. Miel says it's simple then, that he's going to hell. The girl tells Gangyu she's only seen him in pictures, and he's much better looking in person. We learn her name is Jia Hong. Gangyu says his brother mentioned a girlfriend, but didn't say anything about marriage. She says that the thing is, and points to her stomach, saying that his niece or nephew is growing here. He's surprised that she's pregnant, and she says that they only found out a few days ago. And Gangho was going to tell him once Hwang's execution was over. He asks her if it's really true. She says yes, asking if it's a problem. He looks sad, saying no. Then asks what he's doing here, and if he's here to stop the riot. He says yes, and he's a special corrections officer, and was given the order to execute all of the prisoners. She asks why he's the one doing it, asking if the warden made him do it. He says that he'll fill her in quickly. He tells her about how Hwang's execution failed. She wonders who did it, and he says they are still trying to figure it out. She then starts to panic, asking about Gangho, saying he must still be down on the 5th floor. He goes to tell her that Gangho is dead, but since she's pregnant he decides to give her false hope, saying that he's sending rescue signals from the 5th floor. She sighs out of relief, saying she's glad to hear that. He says it's not safe here, and she should head up, but she says she'll stay here. She can make it easier for him to get down. He asks why she thinks that. She says she can read someone's memories by looking at them, as her ability is psychometry. She tells him she didn't read his thoughts, and only does it when there's good reason. She says she uses it to help give the prisoners psychiatric help, and to find out if they are truly guilty. He asks how she will be of help, and she tells him that the entire 2nd floor is under control of Miel and Mael. They are siblings, both with special type powers. They summon creatures that stab people in the hearts, then make puppets out of their victims. Currently all of the prisoners are their puppets. He says he knows their powers, as they are Mago's pupils. He doesn't need information about them, so head on up. She says no, since some of their puppets are guards. And he can't distinguish between the guards and the prisoners. But she can scan their memories and tell them apart. He says if they are already puppets, then they are dead, right? She says they are still alive, they'll be fine once they are released from the sisters' powers. He tells her they won't release their powers. She tells him that she can persuade them. He tells her to think about the baby, and she's being loony. She says she will be a mother, but firstly she is a corrections officer. So she must do her job. He recalls his brother saying the same words. He says fine, and uses his power to wrap around Jia, lifting her into the air, creating a barrier around her. She asks what this is, and he tells her it's his power. It'll keep her safe. She asks if it'll affect her body, saying it feels weird. He begins to walk, and she floats behind him. They see some weird creatures with halos, and Jia says it's Miel, the older brother's power. I thought they were sisters, my bad. Jia tells him to remember guards are under their control. He asks her which is a guard. She says to hold on, and begins to use her power. She tells him the two in the back, so subdue the ones in the front. His power starts to swirl around her, blocking her vision. She asks him what's going on. He says there's an easier way to do it, and restricts the guard's movements. One of the puppets charge at him, but he blows its head off. Saying he still plans to kill the prisoners, that's the easiest way to separate the two groups after all. After blowing a hole into another one, he uses his powers to quickly dismember the remaining puppets. While Jia can't witness it, we see an orb watching it as Miel and Mael are watching him do it. Mael asks her brother what he thinks, asking if maybe he's stronger and faster than their teacher. He says who knows. She asks if he's stronger than Ryosa. He doesn't answer, and she tells him that she is scared. He tells her not to worry, as with all of their puppets it will be hard for him to kill them. That's what they think at least. Jia yells, and asks why he blocked her vision. He says he should have warned her in advance. She asks what happened, and he says he isolated the guards, and executed the inmates. She asks how when the execution devices are all on the 5th floor. He says that he executed them himself. She double checks what he says, and he asks if it was a problem. She asks whose idea was this. He says it was his, and she asks if Yunjo agreed to it. He says yes. Jia sighs, and asks what that bitch is thinking. Asking if he's okay with this. He says that he's doing as a corrections officer has been told to, asking what the problem is. She says that their job isn't about killing inmates, but to rehabilitate them. He says he doesn't need a lecture about ideals. People keep telling him heroes can't kill them, and that they should only be sentenced by the law. But he knows firsthand that killing them is the only proper way to handle it. They cannot be reasoned with. He doesn't care if he's meant to be a hero or a corrections officer. He should have done this a long time ago, as someone has to bring down these monsters. She tries to reason with him, saying they are still humans. He asks if she's serious, and what the hell she is yapping about. He asks why she thinks they are humans, as everyone here has killed thousands and thousands of people. They all deserve nothing but death. There were debates on abolishing the death penalty since it could kill innocents. But nobody has been wrongly convicted since there are people with psychometric powers. He's sure she knows that better than anyone. She says everyone has a story though. He sighs. And she says especially the siblings Miel and Mael. He tells her everyone has a story to tell, but what about their victims? Surely they have stories too. And besides, what difference does it make? They'll still end up dead, whether by his hands or execution. She says an individual shouldn't be allowed to execute though. He tells her to stop, saying that it is enough. If she keeps talking about morals he will send her upstairs, and handle things like he planned to originally. She stays silent, and they keep going down the hallway, until they run into some Dark Souls enemies. He asks her who the officers are, and she says the 3 in the very back. He says he sees, and gets ready to cover her eyes. She tells him that Gangho will be upset when he finds out about this. But he doesn't reply, and the puppets leap at him. One of them slashes his neck, but he doesn't even bother dodging as the sword shatters. Turns out he didn't dodge or anything because all of the talk about Gangho being upset has made him snap. He swings at one of the puppets' heads, and blows it off out of anger. All of the ideals that others have shoved down his throat pissed him off. It's just everyone talking and talking. Jia is afraid of what she's seeing. As he uses his gauntlet to cut another puppet down, the rest begin to jump at him. But Gangyu is done trying to listen to others' ideals. He changes to mode 5, which summons orbs, and he sends them out, each one hitting the puppets. Then it wraps around them, exploding them into a mist. He sighs, as he just got his stress relieved from the prisoners. We see Sinka watching him, and she is pogging out of her gourd, saying that he is getting cooler with each passing minute. He keep walking, and the cycle of killing the prisoners and saving the guards continues. Jia then says that she can see the 3 officers up ahead. He says okay, and goes to kill the prisoners. Then a door opens as Miel and Mael welcome him. We see a giant creature behind the siblings. Jia calls out to them, and Miel asks why she didn't come to them, saying they'd have sent her to heaven. Gangyu says to release the guards and he'll kill them quickly. Miel asks if there's any option where he won't kill them. He says the first floor and ground floor were given the option of putting their devices back on. But everyone on level 2 and below has killed thousands of people. So death is their only option. Miel says he heard that Gangyu knows their master, and Mael says he also knows Ryosa. But he seems very different from his colleagues. She says he's definitely going to hell. Miel tells her to be quiet. Gangyu says they'll see who ends up there first. Miel says if he promises to let them go, they'll release their puppets. He says request denied. Jia tells them to not make it worse, and to put their devices back on. Miel says they've done nothing deserving of death, and she knows it too, that's why they must refuse her offer. Jia tries to persuade them more, but Gangyu says there's no hope. Words are wasted on beasts. Jia starts to sweat nervously. Gangyu says not to worry, there are other ways to communicate, such as pain. He creates a small hammer, and Miel says they don't wish to fight him. Once he hears their story he'll want to negotiate. He says request denied again. Jia tells him they can really be peaceful and to talk to them. He blocks her, saying to please be quiet. He wraps up the siblings, and lifts them into the air. They wriggle trying to escape, and he says that a villain once told him how to torture people, and he didn't think it'd come in handy. They can tell that he's being serious, and Miel says he's the one they can't communicate with, he's the beast he was speaking of. Miel says no, and that he is a monster. They swap their positions with two prisoners, and he says they have special type powers. Then kills the prisoners, saying this is troublesome. Wondering why all of these scumbags keep calling him a monster. As they summon even more puppets to try and stop him, he quickly dashes past them all, cutting their heads off, saying this is really pissing him off. Miel watches this from her orb, and Miel asks if she needs help. She says no, and to keep trying to break the wall. Miel says she'll try and slow him down. She creates a larger summoning circle. And hellish nightmare fuel appears from it, and Gangyu asks if they finally use their summoning powers this time. He instantly smacks one, saying he feels nothing about killing a monster, though it isn't like he feels anything from killing prisoners either. He starts to scrap with them, and leaps out of one of their attacks, and prepares for a large cleanup attack, dashing through the enemies like lightning, instantly clearing the floor up. Miel starts to panic, asking Miel how long it'll take. He says he needs another 10 minutes. She says okay, and bites her thumb, saying she'll buy more time. As she puts her hand on the orb, a loud thud is heard from above. As they see it shatter, and Gangyu drops down in front of them. He says he gave it some thought, and realizes that the creatures will stop once he captures them, so he shouldn't waste his time. He says it's their last chance, and to release their magic on everyone, and he'll kill them so they don't feel pain. They are full of fear, and see that there are too many layers for them to break through. Gangyu tells them once again, to release their powers. Miel raises his hands, and creates some magic circles. Gangyu watches as angel-like beings descend from them. There's Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. We see a red cross, as they are instantly cut into a ton of pieces, just from Gangyu kicking at them. Miel and Miel turn around in fear, then Miel screams and panic summons the guards who are all still alive. He tells Gangyu to stay away, and he'll kill the guards if he doesn't let them out. Gangyu says if he doesn't let them go, and Miel screams no as she is captured by Gangyu's power. He says that his sister will die a horrible death. He starts to constrict his power, making her feel an immense pain. She screams, telling Miel that it hurts, and begins to scream as her bones break. Miel drops to his knees, saying he'll release them now, and will withdraw his powers. But to please let them speak to Jia. Gangyu tells Miel to release them first, he won't stop crushing his sister. Miel looks over and then it cuts to them praying with one another. As the guards are all released, along with the prisoners too. They wonder what the hell is going on. As the prisoners wonder what they are doing here, Gangyu kills them all, scaring Miel and Miel again. The guards ask what's going on, and recognize him as a hero. He tells them to get upstairs, then they quickly run off. Miel asks for him to uphold his end of the deal, he says okay and he'll let them talk to Jia. But they should go elsewhere, away from all the corpses, as it'd stress a pregnant lady too much. Jia's vision is unblurred again, and she asks him what happened. He says it's over now, and the siblings released everyone. She asks where they are, and he tells her they are right here, and wanted to talk to her before being executed. She tells him he could still put the device on them, they are just kids. He tells her he doesn't want to repeat himself. Everyone here has killed thousands of people, so he will kill them himself. Miel asks Jia if she believes they deserve to die. Miel says they didn't do anything deserving of a death penalty. Gangyu tells them to keep it short. Jia tries to talk to them, but once she saw them crying she couldn't find the words to say. Gangyu asks if she has nothing to say. She still remains silent, and Gangyu says he had kept his promise, and obscures her vision again, saying he will now execute the siblings. Miel says she doesn't want to die. She starts to scream for her brother Miel to do something. Gangyu rears his fist back, and slams it where the kids were. But the green has a green hue to it, as we see Mago put a barrier around the siblings to protect them. Miel calls out to his master, and Gangyu is surprised. Mago sighs, and asks what is going on here, but Gangyu is the one wondering what's going on, and wonders if the kids summon an illusion. But says there's no way people on this floor can use magic this high leveled. He's sure Mago casted it himself, and wonders why though, why he casted defensive magic onto them. But says it's whatever, nothing would change if he were to think about it. The siblings are terrified, as the barrier begins to shatter. But the barrier gets restored, as Mago has casted multiple magic circles onto it. Gangyu asks Mago what he's doing, wondering why he's even doing this. Of course Mago is dead, so it must be a magic he used before death. Gangyu shatters a few more layers of the barrier. He continued breaking them, but he began to feel uneasy. We see Miel beginning to lose consciousness, and Gangyu wonders what this feeling is. We see the Equality members, with Mago and some kids inside of a field. One of the members asks if Mago isn't tired, then asks Tomei if they'll have kids when they get married. She asks why he thinks they'll get marred. They start to banter, and Ryosa tells them to quit fighting. Mago calls out to them all, saying to come play with them all. Everyone spent some time with the kids except for Gangyu. Mago approaches him, asking if he dislikes kids. He says it's not that, but rather he doesn't know how to interact with them. He says to do like his parents did when he was a child. Gangyu says his parents died shortly after he was born, so the only family he had was Gangho. Mago makes an uh-oh face, then clears his throat saying pardon me for that. Gangyu looks away, and Mago calls out to him again, saying he can do it with him then, and tells him to act like a child. Gangyu makes a weirded out face, and Mago laughs saying he's just joking. He never knew he was capable of finding such an expression. But he wasn't entirely joking. If things get tough then he can act like a child around him. Gangyu says that's a hard pass, and it goes back to when Huang was fighting them. Gangyu was standing there. He looked around to see the other members' corpses lying on the floor, and began to cry tears of blood. Mago calls out to him, saying that it's alright, trying to comfort him. Saying that things will be alright. After shattering enough barriers, only one remained, and Miel is still terrified. Gangyu stops punching, and looks up at Mago who gives him a gentle smile. Gangyu grits his teeth, and releases his power on Jia. He slowly puts her down. Asking if she can read the memories from abilities, she says yes. He tells her to read the memories of the ability. He wants to know what Mago was thinking when he made this. She wonders what's going on, when she sees Mago. She shows the memory in her hand, saying this is what he was thinking about. Gangyu says it looks unpleasant, but Jia says it looks cute. Then she asks why the memories of the siblings are there too. She says because the ability was cast onto them. She didn't choose it on purpose, and he says that just in case she is mistaken, regardless of what situation they had. They murdered, and he will still execute them all. The kids are terrified in the small version too. Jia says okay. Then drops the memories onto Gangyu. We get flashback to some kind of fancy auction, with the items being those with superpowers. We see people caged up. And that Miel and Miel are inside of one, when they were only 6 years old. The reason they are caged up is because they are being sold at the Ability User Auction, an underworld auction below a fallen city that was open for the VIPs that like to collect rare abilities as hobbies. Both Miel and Miel were sold by their father to this place. The most popular ability users would be those who belong to the special type, and those who belong to the physical type that can transform their bodies. The summoning type is the most common ability user, so they are very cheap. That is why both Miel and Miel had hidden their special type ability, causing them to not be bought for a long time. And just when they were waiting to be thrown away, they were told that somebody wants to buy both of them. We see a woman asking if they are the kids who can summon an angel and a demon. And the man asks if there is a reason she wants to buy them. And he's only asking because they don't accept refunds. She laughs, saying that she's just curious. He asks what she's talking about. She says that she was just wondering what would be the result of mating an angel with a demon. Miel and Miel are confused, and the woman says that they still don't know much since they are still young, but that they'll find out soon. They hear a very loud noise above them, and they both look up to see a giant meteor crashing through the building, absolutely devastating it and the surrounding area, leaving nothing but a crater behind. We see the woman on the ground, in a barrier, and Miel asks his sister if she's okay, and they look around wondering what's going on as they see everybody in barriers. Then their eyes fill with hope as they both look up to see Mago twirling his mustache while laughing along with a woman. In a kind of singing tone, he says the word magic. We finally learn that the girl who is with him is his assistant named Lippis, and that she is a summoning type. She asks what kind of class this is, asking how she's meant to catch up. Mago laughs, saying that if she works hard, she'll be able to do it, and that he told her that imagination is always important for a summoning type ability. She tells him that he's teaching way too fast, and he asks if she finished the task he assigned her. She says yes, and she transported all the people who participate in the auction and released everyone that was captured. Mago says it's time for another class then. She asks what it'll be, and how she's supposed to summon something like a meteor. And we hear Miel calling out to them asking if they can take them with them. He pleads with Mago, saying that they're both summoning type of ability users. Lippis shakes her head no, telling them that he promised to only take her as an apprentice, and he says that he didn't actually do that, and tells them to demonstrate their abilities. We see them summon both an angel and a demon. Lippis says those are quite strange summons for children, saying they usually summon toys or dogs. Mago thinks about it, saying that they are definitely piquing his interests, and tells them to follow him as he'll teach them magic, and for 3 years, he taught them how to use summoning. Explaining, of course, that imagination is very important as the image they have in mind will appear via their ability, such as his meteor. He says that Miel who summons an angel must have remembered their mother who protected everybody when they were young, and that Miel who summons a demon was probably influenced by their father who always abused them. Mago says if they were able to see the world in a wide perspective, they'll be able to summon various things. And it's alright to also be focused on only one thing. We hear Lippis saying that meteor is the best, saying that she's an example of being focused on one thing. But he tells them that he's curious in what direction they'll head in. Miel says that they are actually very interested in heaven and hell. Mago and Lippis are surprised, saying that's very unique despite them being so young. They both explain how before their mother died, she told them that a kind person will go to heaven, and an evil person will go to hell, and those words are what they've held on to for support. They want to make this world right into one where people go to heaven and hell respectively based on how they act. Mago pats their heads, saying he's sure they'll both be able to do it because they are kinder than anyone else. One day we hear Lippis calling out to him in an urgent tone, saying that the association has requested for his help. Mago asks why, saying they ignored his proposal yet now they want help, and she tells him that Asweet has appeared in Finland. Mago is surprised, asking her to repeat that, saying that equality needs to be mobilized immediately, asking what they are doing, and she says she has no idea. He sighs, saying this can't be serious, and he thinks about it, telling her to bring both Miel and Miel here. We see them being told that he's leaving, and Miel hugging him, saying that she doesn't want him to go. Miel asks when he'll be back, and Mago says that the opponent is a tough one, so it'll be at least a few years. Miel asks if they can go along with him, and he said the opponent is too dangerous. He can't let them follow him. Miel starts to cry, saying that she doesn't want him to leave as she does not want to be thrown away again. Lippis tells her that they're not objects, and they can't be thrown away. Mago could tell how sad she is, and gives them a farewell gift, saying that his ability symbol is on their clothes, so if they go to a shelter, the people there will look after them. And he smiles, telling them they'll meet again, and to please grow up as kind people until then. But after he left, they didn't head to a shelter, and instead they isolated themselves in a remote place, strengthening their abilities, focusing on being kind, and showing Mago how much they've grown. They start to ask themselves what's good and what is evil. Also asking themselves what they have to do with their abilities. It jumps to 2 years later, and they finally decided on all of those questions. By their own standards, they went back to their hometown, and we see Miel saying that good people go to heaven, and Miel says evil people go to hell, and that they have taken control of their entire hometown by creating their own versions of heaven and hell, calling it Utopia. Within a single month, this is all the time it took for them to do this. They summoned the angel and demon troops, and monitored everybody in their town, and categorized them into people who are going into heaven or hell. The standards that were set by them were things that their mother had told them not to do when they were young, such as not lying, not to quarrel with your friends, and to be quiet in public places, and so on. And they were too young to understand that their ideals were too simple and childlike. And that's what made them scary, is because they were so simple. We see Miel telling a mother and her child that they've watched them, and they've lived a kind life. We see her crying, begging for mercy, and he stabs them both through the chest, telling them that they're not dying, and they will be dreaming a happy dream in heaven for eternity. The news of this utopia began to spread throughout the world, and eventually reached the ears of the Hero Association. And we see Utoriti, the chairman, telling everybody that it's time to start the meeting. He nonchalantly asks if this is everybody who's attending, as we see there are only 3 people sitting here at the table. We see a third tier hero named Siu Bamjo saying that she guesses everybody else is on holiday. We're introduced to Kusta, who's also a third tier, saying to get to the point already. It cuts to after, and they are surprised, saying that they are only level B1 cases, and nobody would pay attention to these, asking if there aren't any B2 ones. If she wants to increase her tier, she needs to deal with better cases. Yutoriti tells them that there's actually a B3 if they want to go for it. She tells them that she's not good enough to do something that difficult, but wonders why a village takeover case is appearing here, as we see that it is B1 level. She says that it does not feel like it'll help her get points. Yutoriti says that the two children are already categorized as B1 villains, so they put it in. Kusta asks how old they are, and he says that they are around 10 years old. Kusta says that they're so young they probably haven't even undergone puberty, yet they've occupied a whole village. Yutoriti says by the time they're that old, they'll probably be level B2 or B3 villains. Kusta suggests that they raise them, so they can make them worse villains later on. Yutoriti says that it'll take longer than 5 years, and that there's also something to note, as they are apprentices of Mago. Bamjo says she understands now, and that they can just ask Mago to deal with it. Kusta reminds her that Mago went to Finland to deal with Asweed, and she says he can just do it when he's done. Then we hear the third person finally speak up, asking them if she can go. And we are introduced to Kuthu, a third tier hero who is a summoner. It jumps to the sunset as she's riding her bike to the village, and she takes her helmet off and looks up at it, in amazement at everybody floating up in the sky, and she says that it's quite a beautiful sight. She steps closer to it, and we see Mael and Miel realizing they have an intruder. We see Kuthu look up at them, as she realizes they are there too. Then she starts taking pictures with the demons and the angels, wondering if maybe they are in the special category, or if they just made them sleep. But they don't seem like they're dead, and she wonders what it could be. Then she notices something is behind her. They get swapped with both Mael and Miel. Miel calls out to her, asking why she has come here. Kuthu starts clapping, and is surprised, saying that she guesses those in the special category have a lot of convenient abilities, surprised that they can do something like this, asking if there's more. Miel tells her to answer his question, and she asks if Mago knows that they're in the special category, saying that he only takes in apprentices that are summoners. They are both surprised, and she says that they must have not told him. Miel asks her who she is. She then takes off her mask, saying that she is their senior, Kuthu. Miel tells her that the only senior they have is Lippis, and she says that Mago must have erased her, and that she was interested in very sharp things, and she shows the fact that she played guitar on her wrist. She says that Mago told her that she would need to train her defense as well, but defense magic wasn't her thing, so she ignored him, and after that, he slowly stopped paying attention to her. She calls him mean, and then starts to release a psycho aura, saying that Mago is mean, and she repeats this screaming and crying over and over, making both Miel and Mael scared. She says that he even told her that she was talented in magic, and always praised her, yet he completely erased her. Miel starts to cast a magic, telling her that if she doesn't go away right now, he'll make her, but then he looks up to see that her obsession over sharp things was not an exaggeration, as she has summoned an army of scissors and other sharp things. Miel tells her to stop, but we see she does not listen, and she starts murdering all of the citizens who are under their spell. Maybe the kids aren't actually evil. She says that if she does this, maybe Mago will remember her again, and we see that she has gone batshit insane. We see Kuthu continue to laugh while going full schizo, and she starts putting blood on her face, saying how euphoric this feels. We see Miel swap back to where they were originally, asking Mael if she's okay, and they look down at their orb, spotting Kuthu going crazy, and they both look terrified, wondering what's going on. We hear Kuthu saying that it's this feeling that she's craved for so long, and that it's more enjoyable than she's ever imagined. As we see her walking around all of the citizens' corpses, she sees one still standing, and starts to say more over and over while summoning the box cutter 899, yeeting it at the man. But we see it get blocked by both Mael and Miel, and she's amazed, saying that she's glad to see they learned defense magic from Mago, and calls it sturdy. We see one of the angels sneaking behind her, and a magic circle appears, and she instantly cuts the angel in half, saying that their attacks still need a lot of work though. Mael yells at her, saying that she definitely deserves to go to hell, and she reminds them that she is her senior, saying that they need to watch their words, and that she's always wanted to use her ability in a place full of people. But if she did that, she'd be arrested even if she's a hero, which is why she hasn't. But they prepared the table for her like this, allowing her to finally get her wish, and right here and now she thinks she can summon it. We see her stretching her hands to the sky, and her face starts to get visibly strained as she begins to let out banshee-like screams. Miel and Miel watch in horror as we see a giant box cutter 900 in the sky start to appear from her summoning magic. That shit is huge. We see her staring at her creation as if she was in love with it, and of course, we know that the power of imagination is the most important thing to a summoner. The experienced feeling Cthulhu got from killing multiple people had invoked an even greater imagination, strengthening her ability. She says that she hasn't been able to summon anything this big before, and that it's so cool, and it's only thanks to the both of them that she was able to. But now it's time for them to say goodbye. Then we see her get absolutely munched on, and Miel is surprised as we see a giant demon appear from out of nowhere behind her. Miel also went through the same thing as well, as we see her crying tears of blood, calling Cthulhu a demon. She saw her as pure nightmare fuel, which strengthened her ability. Miel looks worried, and Miel asks if she actually just killed somebody, but he hugs her, telling her no, as what she killed was not a human, rather a demon. A whole year goes by, and they had created an even bigger utopia that belonged to them, and they were registered as a new case within the Hero Association as B2 villains of Ruculus prison. We see Mago mortified after seeing this, and Utoriti says he knows they are his apprentices. Mago asks how this happened, and Utoriti says that's what he wanted to ask him. Mago tells him he has to go there now, but Utoriti says no, as this case is not assigned to him. Mago asks what he's talking about. Utoriti says he asks him to kill Asweed before returning, but he didn't do it, and he can't believe they captured him alive and handed him over to the government, and that there's no need to let him do what he wants. Mago says there's no point in talking to him, and that he is going. Utoriti begins to release his aura, saying that he already told him that he can't. Mago releases his own spells, saying that he needs to shut up, and that he's just a lunatic obsessed with authority. And then we hear Ryosa saying that she'll go instead. Mago is caught off guard as she says again that she will go, and she was a third-tier hero at this time. Utoriti says it's a perfect promotion mission for her, and Mago tells him that he already said he was going. Ryosa calls out to him, and starts to walk towards him. As the sunlight starts to beam into the room, and a warm aura envelops Mago. He looks at her as she smiles, telling him to trust her. Back at their utopia, we see Miel telling Miel there's an outsider. And they both look down at their little crystal ball to see who it is this time. Miel asks his sister how many sins he thinks this one has committed so far. We see Ryosa walking through the city, and she looks up at the sky to see 3 people floating above her. We see both Bamjo and Kusta, and she says that at least the other heroes still seem to be alive. Their bodies begin to glow as they get exchanged with Miel and Miel as they ask her who she is, and why she's come here. She introduces herself, saying that she's a hero here to bring them back. They start to get angry that there's another hero, and we see Miel start to summon her army of demons to confront her, and she yells saying that she needs to leave, and that if she doesn't leave she'll be sent to hell. Ryosa says she will go back, but in return she wants both of them to come back with her, and that they can go together. We see all of her demons getting burned up by the sunlight as they both look defeated on the ground. She effortlessly walks towards them, saying that they are children of kind hearts, and she doesn't feel any killing intent from their attacks. And that it's sad that they ended up like this, and if the people who came to them were good heroes the situation would not have gotten this bad in the first place. Ryosa says that they must think it's strange, as they obviously believe what they're doing is correct, but with so many people getting in their way, they must find something strange. Miel panics, saying not to come closer, and she tells them not to be scared as if she won't hurt them, but tells them what they're doing is not good, and that their teacher is sad. Miel asks if this means that Mago is back. Miel tells Miel not to believe her lies, and Ryosa says that she's not lying, and she stretches her hand out, telling them to release their ability and come back with her, and it's time to go to their teacher. We see them instantly do that as they reach out towards her hand, as they felt an indescribable warmth from Ryosa, and went with her. We see Ryosa saying that she knew Mago followed her, as we see him standing before them. They both quickly run over, yelling for him, and start crying. Miel says that they actually had abilities that belong to the special type, and their mother asks them to keep that fact hidden from people, and they tell him they're sorry for lying, as they heard he only takes summoner types as apprentices. He asks them who said such a thing, and they tell him it was Cthulhu, saying she said she was his apprentice. He looks confused, saying that he's never taken in anyone other than them and Lippus. He's only met her once at the association and gave her advice. They are both confused. Over 3 years, they finally reunited, and they shared what happened over those 3 years with each other. The two of them shared how they worked hard to grow up as good children, and how other people didn't understand their efforts. They still don't understand the wrong they've done up until now. We see Mago looking over them as they lay down, and Ryosa asks if he's finished talking with them. He then asks her if she can entrust them to him. She reminds him that even though they didn't kill anyone in the village, they still held thousands of people hostage and killed a hero. It'll be hard for them to avoid the death penalty. He tells her that they simply strayed from the right path due to the fact they were young, and they released their abilities as well, so if she entrusts them to him, he'll help them understand what they did was wrong. But she tells him that she can't do that. He tries to plead with her, but she brings up how they are young children, and says that she does not agree with the law which Utoriti created to allow the execution of underage children, but the law is the law, and that the job of a hero isn't to rehabilitate criminals. But she felt what he felt too, and there are too many problems with this world right now. And she asks him if he would please work with her from now on. He asks her what any of this has to do with the both of them, and she says that she will change this world, and he starts to feel the same warmth the kids did earlier. He tells her that he has a condition, and that he does not want the kids to die until they become at least adults, and that he wants to use his abilities on them. She agrees, and we see him putting a spell on them until they become adults so that they can't die, as they plan to change their world before they do become adults. It finally jumps back to Gangyu, and Jia calls out to him. Never mind, it jumps again to another flashback as we hear Ryosa calling out to him, and she says that she heard a lot about him from Gangho, asking if he will change the world with her. He stands up as he sees the spell cast on them, and Miel says that they only judge people based on the rule, and that the law and rules made by the people of this world should not be any different from what they did. Jia then tells him that both her and Gangho were trusted to rehabilitate these children. She's not saying that they didn't do anything wrong, but they need to understand what they did in the first place. We see him wrap her up in his ability, and he starts to walk towards them while empowering his hand with his red aura, and Miel hugs his sister, and their hearts start to go into overtime as each and every second he gets closer and closer. Chills run down their spine, and Miel begs that he spare their lives. And says on second thought, he thinks what they did was wrong, and they both start full-blown crying. We see Gangyu rear his fist back, and they start screaming for their mother and their teacher. We see the barrier around them starting to dissipate as Gangyu slams his fist down, shaking the entire prison and the area surrounding it. We see that he punched the floor in front of the children, and they are surprised, but clearly horrified. Gangyu says that this is so upsetting, as he was too confused with his own thoughts to know what to do with them. But those thoughts were nothing but a distraction, as he watched both Miel and Miel get chopped into tiny pieces in front of him, as we hear Sinka laughing while walking into the room as the children's limbs float around in the air. Gangyu looks up to see their clothes and blood raining everywhere, and she asks why he is so deep in thought, and thinking that much does not suit him, as we see Canis and Gato with her. She says that he is way more handsome in person, and greets him, calling him her husband. And she says that his bride has entered. As Gangyu stands there soaked in their blood, Sinka starts to introduce herself to him. But he punches at her instead, and we hear it collide with something. Gangyu is surprised as we see Canis has blocked it, saying that when someone is talking, it's basic manners to listen to them. Sinka barks at him, saying that he'll soon become his master, and he's the one who's being rude. He apologizes to her, and she clears her throat, saying that she wants to introduce herself once more. She goes to say her name again, but Gangyu comes in with yet another punch. It collides once more, but the sound it makes this time is different. As we see Sinka releasing a purple aura, sighing, saying that he is impatient. She created some kind of barrier. She says they'll be seeing each other for a long time, and they should talk a little. And we learn that her ability type is space manipulation, and she says that she's the woman who will become the Eve of a new mankind. Gangyu says Eve, like it's a question, and she says, yes, Eve. He sighs, saying that he's tired, and that it's too much mentally to deal with a crazy bitch right now. Sinka says that she's probably the one who's the most sane in this world, and gets her yes men to agree with her. She asks him if he understands that mankind is in a bad situation right now. He doesn't say anything, and we see the bouquet she's carrying start to decay, and she uses it as an example, saying that mankind is slowly degenerating, and at this rate they'll go extinct. He asks what she's talking about, and she asks who he thinks a threat to mankind is. And since he was a part of equality, he would definitely think it is the villains, or the heroes of the past that had absolute authority. However, they are both completely wrong, as we see Gato putting her hand up in an X, making a buzzer sound. Gangyu facepalms at this and sighs, as Sinka continues, saying that those without abilities live with a title normal. Those genes need to be culled. Only those who possess superior genes should be producing future generations, but due to the sacrifice given by those who have superior genes, those which were meant to have been culled have multiplied tremendously. For example, The second-gen equality heroes led by Ryosa. They possess such incredible genes, yet why did they still die even though the logic of nature says otherwise? It's natural for those who were not selected by evolution to be extinct. But she says that Gangyu is fine since he is no longer a hero. He still facepalms, and she says right now he's definitely enjoying killing those that are weaker than him, and that she fell in love when she saw that. And she tells him that this prison is actually the gathering spot for superior humans that will become the new mankind, and that everybody here has been unfairly imprisoned for killing inferior humans, and after they get rid of all the inferior humans, they'll build a world where only people with strong abilities exist, the Alpha world. And she tells him not to worry if the strong heroes change their minds and join them, they'll include them within the new mankind as they're not strict. Gangyu says he tries to not kill anybody who isn't a criminal, but it looks like it's going to be inevitable this time. Sinka says that's so embarrassing, and Gato says that she doesn't think it's what she thinks. Of course, she doesn't listen to her, and instead says that they shouldn't do that right now, and they should do it when they're alone next time. Gato tries to tell her that's not what he meant, but Sinka tells her to be quiet, since she doesn't know anything. Then she clears her throat, saying in any case, he will be Adam, and that she will be Eve, and the new children, maybe the other two of them, will lead the evolution of mankind. She then says she actually first thought of Huang as Adam, and used an EMP attack to save him. Gangyu starts to think about it, and she says that the prison security is a lot stronger than she thought, as no external attacks could do anything, which is why after they got their hands on the floor plan, she created a customized EMP and blasted it from within using her ability. Gangyu asks about it, and she says that she talked to Huang after using it, but he's still underage and hasn't even gone through puberty, and that obviously he knows that his ability is only complete after puberty, that's why he'll need more time, but her time is precious and it won't deter her, as her name Sinka means to be full of imagination. She found a great solution. Before he becomes an adult, she'll work with Gangyu for mankind, and once Huang does become an adult, they'll work with him instead. This is the solution she created, to pass on the two superior genes that belong to the both of them, asking him what he thinks, saying that the two of them could become a family, and that they can reconcile, which is great, and she asks him if he understands what she was saying. He starts to get hella angry, saying that this means they are the ones behind the attack on the prison. She says that she wants his opinion on the other things, and not that, and then realizes that his brother was a guard who died due to the attack, but tells him that it'll be fine, and he can just build another family with her. We see him start to get even angrier, and she asks him if he has decided, and he says that he decided a bit ago, and she asks what he thinks. He says he takes back what he said about killing being inevitable, and we see him grab onto her barrier, saying that he will make it as painful as possible by ripping her apart himself. Sinka is confused on why he's angry, and Gato and Canis realize this isn't good, but Sinka says that in the end, a lover's quarrel does not sound that bad to her, as they'll get to know more about one another as they fight. Sinka says that he's really energetic, and Canis tries to tell her this is dangerous. We see an attack come in, but Sinka blocks it with her spatial magic. We see Gangyu teleported outside as he's looking down at the prison from way up in the air, and Sinka says on second thought, that they should do this outside instead, and that he needs to cool his head a little bit, and then she leaves. We see him floating in the air as he starts to release more of his power. He looks pissed and crashes straight down through the prison, shattering all the way back down to the floor he was on, and he glares at Sinka, who is amazed. We see a red cross form from his attack as he instantly comes in with a kick across Sinka's chest, but we hear her laughing as we see she has dodged it with a portal. Gangyu comes in for another one, and she says that it's almost like they're playing hide and seek. But we see him connect to the floor rather than her face, and he shatters the area beneath him. She creates a little portal and taunts him, saying that it's already closed, telling him to try and catch her. He then shifts into mode 1, equipping his gauntlets, and she says this is the same thing he did on B1. We see the red cross once more, this time as an X, as he's leaping towards her face. She barely evades it, closing the portal, appearing behind him. And we see her starting to sweat nervously, telling him to wait a minute, as we see his hand get closer. This continues as we see them dashing all along the room, as he's bouncing portal to portal, trying to kill her. She starts to cry as she realizes that they are not playing anymore. As his attack gets closer, we see it come to a complete standstill, and he is surprised as we see Gato is actually a Slinky in human form as she is wrapped around him. Then she meows at him, and Sinka says things are just getting good, asking why she got in her way. She tells her that she would have died if he had gotten her. We see him slam Gato into the ground. Then he does this over and over again, turning her already Slinky-like body into that of a pancake. We see Canis and Sinka watching as she gets turned into nothing but a mist after Gangyu is done. Then we hear Gato speaking as she's telling Sinka that she warned her that she would have died if he had gotten a hold of her. And Gato asks Sinka what she's going to do about the life she just lost. Sinka sighs, and Gato tells her to make her decision already. And Sinka says that it's such a pity, and Gato says she must be talking about the life she lost. But instead, Sinka says that the genes are so precious, asking why it had to come down to this. We then see Gangyu instantly swap into mode 5 as the red orbs begin to float around him. He then hears Sinka saying multiple dimensions, and he realizes what's going on, as we see every prisoner from the prison being released from their cells at the exact same time. And she tells him to say hi to them as they are the new mankind, and they'll be in charge of it all. We're about to get a lot of new characters introduced, hold on tight. We see a Swede saying that he can't believe Mago is dead, and he should have been the one to do it. Then a woman named Ho, asking who would be the one to tame her, who trying to match her freak. And there's a man named Friachua, asking if an old man like him is even needed. Another man named Natura says that everything is needed in this world. And we see a little bug kid crying while biting their nails, saying that they're so scared. Their name is Pekino. Another man named Viti says that a hero who's wearing a corrections officer uniform is giving him some inspiration, while hitting a fat dab. Another girl named Maraise tells him that it's rude to smoke outside of smoking areas. We see a girl whose name is Zing saying her name over and over like she's a Pokemon. And then the actual Pokemon named Tiburon is asking what is wrong with her. We hear a young man named Juyong laughing, saying that there are people worse than demons gathered here. Those were all the B3 criminals, and now we're moving on to the before. We are introduced to a woman named Jin, and she wonders why her sheath is empty. Then we're introduced to a beast-like man named Stiffness, saying that she's useless as she needs to rely on a weapon. A man named Terrapier asks if number 4 is still alive. We see some voodoo lady named Maladity, saying that her clothes are much more comfortable than whatever they are wearing. And there's also this weird creature with a Power Ranger villain named Hero. Ironic. We see Gangyu's eyes start to gaze up as we see his brother's hat soaked in blood as the B5 criminals are now coming out. We see Aora, who obviously has not said a word the entire time, and Huang, who calls out to Gangyu. We see a giant red beam and a ton of lightning start to exude from Gangyu. Huang watches as Gangyu instantly jumps into mode 0 as he is not here to fuck around anymore. Huang says he can't wait to play with him again as we see Gangyu going all gas, no brakes. As Gangyu gets closer, we see Huang raise up the remnants of his brother, aka Meatwad, and then he throws his hand toward the floor, as we see Gangyu's attack collide with something that Huang had thrown out. The sound, along with the vibrations, shook the entire prison. We see the other prisoner saying that that's a barbaric way of fighting, and Ho says she hopes nobody was careless and gets injured by the impact. Then we hear some people telling Yunjo that they need to get out of here, but she's too busy wondering how things ended up like this, saying this is not how she thought it would go. We see Gangyu with his hand on his knee, as he is kneeling on the floor. All of the criminals of B3 and before were captured by the Equality heroes. However, none of them have seen Gangyu in his battle mode. We see Hero saying that now he understands why Ryosa stopped Gangyu from fighting. Terrapier says this is death. Specifically, this is what death looks like when it is manifested. There were a wide array of emotions that the prisoners felt when they saw his appearance. Some felt awe, while others felt jealousy. Some were saddened. Then there is Huang, who is very happy about it. Huang says he never showed this technique to him previously, and is surprised that he didn't, then tells him that he's truly incredible. We see Gangyu coming in with a punch, and we hear it collide with Huang's face. We see that he managed to block it with some kind of barrier, only leaving a minor impact. He says it seems like Gangyu still has more up his sleeves. We then see Gangyu get hit by multiple attacks from Huang. They send him flying. But he manages to stop his momentum by digging into the ground and running full speed back at Huang, leaving a red trail in his wake. He stretches his hand out for yet another attack, and we see it barely stops just shy of Huang's chest. Huang says he already condensed the space in front of him in advance. That is why Gangyu's attack didn't work. Then we see a giant explosion. Maladity calls him a scary brat, saying that he's this strong with just his ability, and not even using physical combat stuff. He's underage to boot, so if he becomes an adult, he would be one hell of a monster. We see Huang calling out for Gangyu, asking where he went, saying that he knows that wasn't enough to beat him. He goes to call out for him again, and then we see the punch this time actually connects, launching Huang through the air. As Huang begins to cough up blood from the attack, Gangyu comes in with a left, hitting him straight in the stomach. At such a speed, it breaks the sound barrier and launches him into the wall. The Pokemon and the other Pokemon watch this fight, saying that it's something between monsters. Then they instantly get their heads cut off, before they can even react, as Gangyu is now going for the kill on Asweed as well. We hear the attack, but Gangyu sees a familiar barrier, as Asweed has used Mago's defense magic, saying that it was a true masterpiece, and it's a shame that he died. Asking if he feels nostalgic seeing his own teammates' magic. We see Gangyu does not back off and continues to push forward, as the barrier begins to shatter, and Asweed says that he's seriously jealous of his strength. The barrier finally collapses, and as Gangyu comes in for the killing blow, we see Hero from the side, with a surprise kick, sending him flying away. Hero then gets himself ready, as we see from the reflection of his eye, Gangyu starts to raise back up again, in a beast-like form. He glances over, and we hear Huang saying to stop. We see him below them. He says that Gangyu is here to play with him, but no matter how he sees it, he still seems to be hiding something both now and back then, asking if he's seriously holding himself back because of the prison officers, calling him a softie. He says this won't do, and he raises his hand, saying he'll create a playground just for the two of them. He begins to curl up his hand, and it jumps to outside the prison. We hear a rumbling from underneath. As it slowly starts to cave in, we see Yunjo, surprised by this and beginning to fall, wondering what's going on. And Ju Young looks up, wondering if he is seeing this shit right. Gangyu gives a cold glance over at Huang, who says, it's time to go all out, and we see the prison starting to get destroyed. Yunjo starts to panic as her and her guards start to realize what's going on, and then we see a familiar red orb begin to wrap around them, and she wonders what it is this time. But we all know as we see multiple of the orbs start to rise out from the prison as it gets completely shattered beneath them, that this is Gangyu getting them all out from Huang's attack, who says that this place is actually pretty sturdy. We see a hue of red on his eyes, as Gangyu is instantly in his face with another attack. Luckily, Sinka comes in clutch with the portal and takes him away, saying that he's meant to let the villains finish their power-ups, and tells everybody that it's time to get out as there's too much dust in here. We see Jin looking up, and then she grabs a stone, and her hand begins to glow as Sinka is curious about what she's doing. We see this stone slowly start to change shape to that of a sword, and we see Jin inspecting it. Sinka asks what she's doing after we see her do a light slash. It does that delayed anime thing where it shows that there were actually 4 simultaneous cuts. Sinka asks her why she'd do something so wasteful, saying they can just leave through the portal, and tells everybody it's time to go. It then jumps to a city street as we see a bunch of people chattering about something. Gangyu has been sent to the middle of a random street. They look at him wondering what the hell he is. Another portal appears, taking him away, and they are left in pure confusion wondering if that was a villain. We see Gangyu in a new area, but there is too much dust around to see where he is, and we see him glancing up, looking at the remnants of the prison. They have been turned into a giant wad like his brother. Floating above, we see Huang stretching his hand out, and a blue light begins to form in the middle of the pile as it explodes out. Huang says, boom, as we see it scatter around the area. Gangyu stands there and tanks the attack, and Huang has now created the perfect landscape for them to fight, aka a giant crater. He lands on the ground, and we see Gangyu kneeling as the attack was quite heavy, and that it even managed to rip some of his Mode 0 off. All the other prisoners watch with anticipation, and Sinka says that nobody is to get in their way, and they're only going to watch for now. The reason why the B3 and before criminals are listening to her even though they don't seem like the type to do so is simple. It jumps to her talking to Stiffness, saying that she will fulfill their desires. And we get quite a zoom in. She used the desire of these criminals, and the feelings that they all have, and was able to successfully get every one of them to help her in her goal of creating the Alpha world. And we see Asweet asking what would happen if he refused, and she said it would be sad, but they would die. This was another big reason why everybody listened. It jumps to Huang being told all of this, and he laughs about the whole new mankind thing. He begins to say that it's pretty interesting. She wants to marry Gangyu and then him later on, and she says that she's glad he finds it interesting, and he tells her there's a problem, and that he thinks that fighting Gangyu is way more interesting than marrying her. She tells him that if he only goes after short-term enjoyment, he'll become a dopamine addict. He needs to think of the long term if he kills Gangyu. He'll have nothing else to do. He tells her it's alright, and he'll probably die in the end. He's okay because he'll die while enjoying himself. She says that if she gives birth to a child with Gangyu and gives birth to another one with him afterwards, they'll keep him entertained after they grow up, and once he becomes an adult, he'll become even stronger than he is now. He can then have even more fun fighting Gangyu at that time. She tells him that he needs to have a longer life, and he'll be able to have fun until the day he dies if he works with her. We see him starting to get swayed as she seems so excited about it, and he smiles saying okay, and he'll give it a try as it seems fun, and she tells him that he made a great decision. He then tells her bluntly that he doesn't love her, asking how they're going to get married. She tells him that it's okay, as he'll definitely come to love her by then, and she's sure of that. Flashback ends, and we see him getting punched in the gut as yet again. It's another sound barrier breaking punch that launches him into a wall. He begins to cough up blood and laughs, saying that he guesses just using one hand won't do, and he tells Gangyu to say something, asking if he's going to be silent the whole time, or maybe it's because he can't talk in that form, and then asks him if he knows what's in his hand and shows him the meatwad saying that it is his brother. Gangyu begins to lose all sense of reasoning and lets out the most primal scream, some berserk type shit, as he leaps in for an attack on Huang, who was surprised that he can speak after all. As Gangyu starts to run in, we see Huang beginning to lift dirt out of the ground. They slowly start to change shape into that of giant spears as he arms them for Gangyu's attack. Gangyu rears his fist back, and the spears start to fly in towards him. He sends his fists out, shattering some of them, but we see more appearing behind him. He senses this and turns, cutting them all away, and then looks back in front of him to see the remains of his brother being thrown at him. As it gets close, he goes to punch it, but stops himself as he can't bring himself to do that to his brother. He grits his teeth and tanks the attack, allowing it to hit him in the stomach. We see it create an indent as he gets knocked back into a wall on the other side of the crater. The meatwad flies back to Huang, who laughs, saying that it looks like he can't attack this, and that he just got a great idea, asking if he'd be able to attack him if he ate it. He said it's too big to eat in one bite, so he wants to compress it a little more. Before he gets the chance to do anything, Gangyu uses all of the speed he possibly can muster, hitting Huang with a kick to the stomach. We see this attack is very effective, and it shatters the area around them. As Gangyu has his foot on Huang's chest, he raises his fist, hitting him in the face with his right. Then he raises his left, repeating it, hammering him down into the ground. All the other villains watch Huang get hit over and over again. Huang then grabs onto Gangyu's arm. When Gangyu goes for another punch, we see a blue light, and Gangyu realizes what's going on. Huang smiles as if he's enjoying himself. We see another giant attack, like the one that destroyed the prison. As Gato looks up, Sinka says that it's so beautiful, and it's a pity that it's going like this, and it would be nice if they made up. But Gato says that would never happen. And Canis looks down, telling her that he thinks the fight is about to end. As we see Gangyu out of mode 0 on the floor, Huang looks at him and sees him struggling to stand back up, but his eyes are full of determination. He falls back down to the ground once more. And then we see Huang's eyes get that red tint again. As Gangyu starts to release his aura, all around him, acting like some kind of thread, as Sinka and everyone else is surprised, we see a giant egg-shaped dome form around both Gangyu and Huang. Huang laughs, asking how many skills he has, saying that he really is impossible to defeat. And asks him how it was, and how it feels to kill somebody. Asking if he feels as disappointed as he does, saying that they disappear with just a single touch, and it's not satisfying enough for him to release his pent-up emotions. Gangyu glares at him, telling him to shut his mouth, and Huang asks if he doesn't feel refreshed after playing with him, saying that he must have been really frustrated trying to keep his powers suppressed this whole time, because he wished to play hero with all the other trash. Gangyu repeats the words "you," while trying to figure out what to say. Then he tells Huang that he knows nothing. Huang looks up at the dome, saying that it looks like a super dangerous skill, and that this must be his final attack. And that he is at his limits right now, so this is bad. And he wonders if he will become an adult like Sinka said he would. And if he would even be able to defeat him. We see the dome starting to change shape once more, and Gangyu says that will never happen, because he will be dying here. The dome begins to shake violently outside, and Sinka panics, wondering what's going on. And she starts to summon a portal inside, calling out for Huang. And once she glances inside, she sees the dome absolutely annihilating Huang, stabbing him throughout his body. And Gangyu's eyes are filled with pure rage. She screams out to Huang, and then casts another portal, letting herself get close to him. She puts her hands under his limp body, and puts him through a portal, telling Terrapier to heal him, and he tells her to step aside. He stabs him through the chest, which surprises her. Then says he can't believe he managed to use his ability to protect his vital points amidst all of that, saying the kid's battle IQ is nuts. We see Gangyu's red aura wrap around his hand, and he tells her that it's done. She starts to scream, telling Huang to wake up. Terrapier looks up at his hand, saying it's quite an unsettling ability. He cuts his own arm off, which surprises the others. Then he instantly regrows back like a lizard, and asks what they should do about Gangyu. Hiro says what else is there left to do, and they need to kill him right now. Sinka tells him to hold on, as before they do that she'd like to talk to him one last time. We see him laying face down like Yamcha. It then jumps to some time later. Gangyu is limping through the crater while his eyes look determined. We see the remnants of his brother on the ground. He picks it up and looks down at it with pure regret, as he realizes this could have been avoided if he just killed Huang early on. Sinka then comes through the portal, calling out to him, saying that it's not too late yet, and he should come with her. She sees him instantly readying his aura. She says she really doesn't understand this. He then gets zapped by yellow lightning, and Asweed says it seems like the negotiations have broken down, and they should kill him quickly before he recovers his energy, asking if there's any objections. But everybody agrees as it is unanimous that they need to kill him now. Bakino says they're scared of killing people, but they're more scared of him being alive, and Nature says it's not too bad to become one with nature. Everybody pretty much gives their 2 cents on the subject, and they all think that he's too much of a threat to be left alive. We then hear Hiro telling everybody to get out of his way as he turns into an absolute unit. He raises his fist up, punching down onto Gangyu, who we see is cradling his brother's remains. With Hiro's attack as the start, the criminals of B3 and before started to launch their attacks at Gangyu. He wonders how much time has passed as we see him still laying on the floor, holding onto his brother's remains, enveloping it with his aura. We then see Hiro raise his foot up, saying it's time to end this. He goes to slam it down on Gangyu, but instead, there's a strong gust of wind as we see a familiar blue attack has stopped it. Huang calls out to Sinka, saying that she said before that he'd become even stronger as an adult, and that he says for the first time in his entire life he has a dream, and that dream is for him to defeat Gangyu as we see his eyes filled with happiness, and that they can't kill him as he'll be the one to do that. Asweed says this gives off the same vibes as people in horror movies, and Sinka tells everybody that it's time to leave, and since they all promise to listen to what she said. Nobody decides to go against her, and they all agree. We see them all getting their own portals created, and she asks Huang if he needs help getting in, but he tells her it's okay. As he puts on Gangho's hat, he glances over towards Gangyu, saying when they meet again he'll be the victor. To sum up everything that's happened, 8B3 criminals, 5 before, and 3B5 criminals have all escaped from the prison. We get a further shot from the crater, as we see Kingston looking down at Gangyu, and he begins to laugh, saying that the world is about to become so much noisier, and it's just as he thought, as in the near future Sinka would turn the world upside down. It then jumps to the most terrifying creature I've ever seen in my life, Manhwa Patrick Star. As a woman is saying really, and that she's not ready yet, he continues talking to her, and then we see it start to distort as it was just a scream. It fades to black, and then instantly to the same symbol inside of Sinka's eyes as it is an advertisement for the Alpha world. She greets everybody, introducing herself as the person who will become their new Eve, and shows her 2 loyal followers, Canis and Gato. We see a prompt asking what is Alpha world, and Canis explains that it is the world that will be built to save mankind with Miss Sinka as the Eve. Another prompt appears asking who possesses the right to become a part of it. Gato explains that there are a couple of conditions. The first one is that they need to possess strong abilities. The second one is that they must not defend those with genes that have not been selected, and the third one is that they must be a healthy individual who can breed. Another question appears, and it is what would happen to those that aren't qualified. Sinka says that those who aren't selected are committing the crime of remaining in mankind and deserve to die. If they committed a crime that deserves death, then what else should be done other than them just being executed? Anyone who has genes that aren't selected will all be executed. She says in the coming month they will be selecting the neo-humans that will be a part of the Alpha world and send them invitations. Those who reject their offer will be seen as those trying to defend those without the genes, and they will execute them as well. She then puts her hands together, saying may the neo-humans be glorified, and reminds them that she is their future Eve, and tells them bye as the screen fades back to the girl talking to Patrick. Then the screen fades out entirely as we see that we are at an important meeting, and they say in regards to the Ruculus prison escape and the broadcast that was streamed to the whole world afterward. We see a man named Bizet, who is the world president, saying it's time to call the World Security Council meeting, aka WSC. They start to give a brief overview of Sinka, and they understand that she is the one who used the EMP attack, and he asks if she is on the villain list, but they said that the Hero Association said she isn't. They say that's a pain in the ass, and they can't believe it. And this is just proof that the heroes went downhill when equality died, and they wonder what they are going to do. We hear a man saying that before they go into that, there need to be a few things set straight. Yoonjo gave the right to an ex-criminal on her own accord without reporting to the higher-ups. He is the Harmony Party leader named Einhet, who asks how an individual could give somebody else the right to perform execution as they pleased, and that has caused incredible chaos. We then hear a familiar voice as Yutoriti says that Yoonjo simply made the best decision that she could, and he would have done the same as her. He is now the current World Party leader as he has graduated from chairman. Einhet tells him that no matter how urgent the situation was, she must have at least had the time to report it. Yutoriti says even that little time would have been wasted, which is why she instantly went to find Gangyu instead, asking the Justice Minister El Giotto if he agrees. He says although he thinks it's wrong to give somebody the right to execute, he does understand that the situation was a unique one, and that it was a tough decision to make. The fire commissioner named Balda says that looking at the situation, he's worried that the people will suffer a lot. The police commissioner Crum says that they are already suffering damages. They've been so busy ever since the public safety went to shit after that broadcast. We see an absolute badass named Guerra, who is the National Defense Vice Minister, asking if they should consider themselves in the midst of a war or if it's still just a prison escape. Yutoriti slams his hand on the table, saying that he told them all of them have to be killed, and that they landed themselves in their current situation because they half-assed the executions. Crum says that wasn't her fault. Yutoriti says if this was back when he was still the Hero Association chairman, they would have died before there was an execution, and he can't believe they invited this upon themselves by not killing them. Ever since Ryosa became the chairman, the world has gone to shit. Balda says that he hasn't changed in the slightest, and Einhet agrees, saying what he did when he was the chairman wasn't correct and to look at the heroes at that time, and that most of them were not in the right state of mind. Yutoriti asks what's wrong with that, saying it was way better to tie them down as heroes than let them become villains. Einhet asks if being a hero is all that matters. Yutoriti says after Ryosa became the chairman, the people who could have become heroes went back to becoming villains and caused problems again. Balda says that the idea of a hero he has is different from what he imagines. Yutoriti says they are just all so obsessed with an ideal world that they fail to see reality. Bizet, the president, speaks up again, calling out Ryosa's name. Everybody glances at him, and he says if she were here, he wonders what she would have said, as we see her spot is vacant. Yutoriti looks angry and clicks his tongue. Back outside as he's getting into his car, he asks if the meeting went well. He says that shit was ass, and they're so frustrating to talk to, and that there shouldn't be a debate. They just need to kill the villains and be done with it, and all this is because of Ryosa. The woman asks what he intends to do from now on, and he says that after Ryosa became the chairman, the members of the WSC, specifically those in favor of correction, the Harmony Party, the Fire Commissioner, the National Defense Vice Minister, and the Hero Association Chairman, and those in favor of punishment, the World Party, the Police Commissioner, the Neutral Party, the Justice Minister. It was a 4v2. That's why their opinions were always ignored. Even the president leans more towards Ryosa's side. But now that the chairman's position is vacant, they just need to put one of their people there. If it's 3 versus 3, they'll be able to get their opinions taken seriously. Which is why they're gonna go meet Gangyu. And he is sure that other people have already started making their own moves as well. And we see that him hinting about Lippis. The lady says that Gangyu was quite close to Ryosa, and he says yes he was. However, the situation is a lot different now. And he begins to laugh, saying it's time to go meet Gangyu, as we see him on a bed with 4 healers, doing their best to get him back in shape. As our boy is looking decrepit, we hear Gangyu asking why heroes can't kill villains. One of the Equality members, the monk, laughs, saying when he first entered Equality he had the same thought as him, and he too will find the answer to that question as he journeys with them. Another member says that he doesn't want to kill people, and if heroes must do that, then he will quit being a hero. We then see Tame saying that her sister is a criminal on death row, and while it's true that she committed a crime that deserves death, she thinks that she should be given a chance to atone for her crime. Mago says it's better to think about it in reverse. Why must heroes kill villains? He asks if it's because they have no value when alive, or if it's because they've given up on being human. He starts to get into the philosophical aspect, and Ryosa says that their job isn't to kill villains, but to save everyone. From now on, he must save other people with them. She goes to say something else, but it cuts, and Gangyu starts to wonder why everyone left without telling him the answer. Jia says that a prison guard's job is to rehabilitate criminals. She's not against the death penalty, but as a prison inspector, she has a duty to tell the criminals what they've done wrong. Gangho says that the law is what judges people, and as prison guards, they perform the judgment given, which is why before the execution is done, the duty of the prison inspector is then cut off. Gangyu starts to have visions of him being turned into a meatwad. It starts to rain blood, as Gangyu looks up into the sky hearing Huang call out to him. He holds on to his brother, saying that surely even he finds this fascinating since everybody's still saying this kind of frustrating shit about heroes not being able to kill villains even after everything that has happened. Gangyu looks shocked, and then we see him jolt awake, panting due to the nightmare. We then hear Lippis calling out to him, saying that she's glad he's finally awake, and she asks if he is alright. We see him look over, still in shock from the dream. Then Lippis apologizes to him, saying that she should have gone to help, but even though she knew something had happened in prison, she couldn't find out the details because of Yunjo having hidden everything, even about the riot occurring. Gangyu says that it's fine, and she wouldn't have been able to help him if she had gone there. Lippis asks if he's really okay, saying that she heard about what he was tasked to do in the prison. He tells her that he's actually not okay at all, and she calls out to him, thinking that he is feeling guilty, but instead, he grits his teeth out of anger, saying he should have killed them all, yet he couldn't do it. He asks her if she also came here to tell him that he shouldn't kill villains, and if that's the case, then to go back as he's no longer a hero, but rather a prison guard. Lippis tells him they need to form a new hero association and choose heroes for a new equality. Right now, she is acting as the temporary chairman of the association, but with the impending changes, they need a hero that will lead them, so they're thinking of choosing him, a former equality member, to be the chairman. He says he just told her that he wasn't a hero anymore, and that the heroes should take care of their own jobs. As soon as he recovers, he intends to go out and do what he must. She calls out to him, trying to convince him, but Yutoriti says that what he said is correct, and he's standing in front of the bed. He says that he is now a prison guard. Lippis is surprised to see him, and Yutoriti says that he really went through a lot to execute the criminals by himself, and that said, he won't have to go through all that anymore as he'll soon become the association chairman, and he plans to involve heroes in the execution of criminals. Gangyu says that he's one of the world party leaders, asking what he is yapping about. Yutoriti says he'll soon be stepping down from that position so he can participate in the election for the Hero Association chairman, and that he came here to talk and find out if he is interested in becoming the chairman. There's no need for that after hearing his conversation with Lippis. They can just treat this as if he's visiting, then he goes to leave, saying he hopes he'll recover and get discharged soon. He tells Lippis he wants her to watch what comes next. Lippis screams, asking if he really thinks anybody will elect him. Yutoriti smiles, saying that they'll have to wait and find out. Concerned, she calls out to Gangyu, but he tells her that he's tired and that she should leave. We see her standing there, just shocked, and then jumps back to Yutoriti, saying as he thought and everybody's moving around busily, many others excluding him and Lippis would probably look for Gangyu. After those with abilities appeared, everybody has gone through a lot. Organizations like the army and police have become too reliant on a single powerful individual. The WSC will probably discuss Gangyu's execution of the criminals and whether he should be given the right to perform there or not. Based on the current laws, Gangyu's actions are indeed wrong. His assistant then asks him what he plans to do. He says that if that's what the law dictates, and he goes to tell her his plan, but it jumps back to the WSC meeting, and they are talking about punishing Yunjo. Crumb says even if her subordinate had done what she did, she would have overlooked it. As they continue, Yutoriti mocks them all, saying that they're not providing any information on what they could do or a solution. All they are doing is just saying that they're not going to do anything. All they want to do is talk about ideal situations that are meaningless. Einhet says that he's already suggested a solution. That the fire brigade, the army, and the police, including the Hero Association, joining forces and capture criminals. Then they'll subject them to the judgment of the law. Yutoriti asks if that's truly his solution. Einhet says yes. Yutoriti says that just sounds to him like he's not all there upstairs. Izay calls out to him, asking what he's proposing then. Yutoriti says he would like to have a vote. They ask him about what. And he says that they should get the nation to vote on whether Gangyu should be given the right to execute or not, as he plans to change the laws. And he wonders if they will be against or for him having the right to execute criminals as he pleases. If you've watched till the end, comment, Deadpool, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.